If you're watching this, it means I decided finally to take the risk. Most people think billionaires just hide their money. Offshore accounts, shell companies, the usual stuff you hear about. But what I found wasn't just hidden wealth. It was something else entirely. Something he never wanted anyone to see. And the moment I understood what it actually meant, I genuinely wished I hadn't looked. Because what I saw didn't just change how I think about money. It changed how I think about everything. The power, the control, and what people at that level are really afraid of. Not the stuff they put in magazines or say in news and podcast, but the real thing underneath all of it. Because once you hear it, you're going to see things differently too. But first, let me take you back about 3 years. I had one of those jobs that nobody thinks twice about. I was a document courier, which basically means I picked up sensitive packages, files, legal documents, contracts, sealed envelopes, and I delivered them to specific people at specific addresses. No questions asked. That was the #1 rule. Don't ask questions about anything. The company I worked for had one major client, a private holdings firm. I didn't know who was behind it. Nobody talked about it. You just showed up, grabbed what you were given, and delivered. Clean, quiet, done. Most days it was completely uneventful. Office buildings, law firms, the occasional private residence behind a gate. Boring, honestly. But it paid well enough, and I didn't have to think too hard about it. Then, one night, everything changed. It started with a wrong address, and before you say anything, that wasn't on me. Dispatch gave me the wrong suite number. I was supposed to go to the 44th floor. I went to the 14th. Easy mistake in a building that size, especially late at night when the lobby staff is half asleep and barely glances up at you. The elevator opens. I walk down the hallway. I find what I think is the right door. It's open. Not wide open, just cracked. Maybe 2 inches. It's the kind of open where you can't tell if someone left in a hurry or if they're just inside waiting. I knocked. No answer. So I pushed it a little, just to check if anyone was there. That's when it started. The room on the other side of that door was not what I expected. It wasn't an office. Not exactly. It was like someone had taken a high-end hotel suite and turned it into a command center. There were monitors on one wall, at least 15 of them. Different screens, different feeds. Some looked like live camera footage from various locations. Some were filled with spreadsheets, names, numbers, columns of data I couldn't make sense of from where I was standing. And one screen had what looked like a real-time map of the ocean, with small icons tracking shipping vessels. On the glass table in the center of the room, there were folders, stacked in neat piles, each one labeled with a country name. I didn't go inside to be clear about that. I stood in that doorway for maybe 15 seconds, maximum 15. I wasn't snooping. I was just frozen. My brain couldn't catch up to what my eyes were taking in. And then I heard footsteps behind me. A man appeared. No warning, just suddenly there. He wasn't angry. He wasn't panicked. He was completely, unsettlingly calm. Dark suit, no tie. He looked at me like you'd look at something stuck to the bottom of your shoe. Not with anger, just mild annoyance. Like I was an inconvenience to be dealt with, not a person to be spoken to. He said very quietly, "You're on the wrong floor." That was it. That's all he said. He pointed to the elevator. I walked to it. The doors closed, and as they did, I caught something in the reflection of the polished metal doors. A reflection of the room behind me, still visible through the crack. There was a second person in there, standing against the far wall, completely still, watching me. I hadn't noticed them when I looked inside. They were just there, like they'd been standing there the whole time, waiting to see what I would do. I didn't say a word about that delivery, not to anyone, not for a long time. But I started paying attention after that. And what I put together, piece by piece, over the next 2 years, that's the story. The man who owned that building, that floor, that entire private holdings operation, His name was Marcus Veldin. That's not his real name. I changed it, and the reason for that will make sense the further we go. Marcus Veldin was not the kind of billionaire you've heard of. He wasn't building apps or launching rockets or giving TED Talks about disrupting industries. No verified social media, no magazine profiles, no inspirational quotes, no public-facing anything. If you searched his name, you got almost nothing. A few old corporate filings buried in legal databases, a mention in a Swiss business registry from 2009, one photograph from what looked like a charity gala, blurry, taken from a distance, and he was already half turned away from the camera. That's it. For a man worth an estimated $40 to $60 billion, he was a ghost. And I'd learn later that the invisibility wasn't some personal quirk. It was a structure, deliberately built, carefully maintained, and extraordinarily expensive to keep in place. Here's something most people don't think about when they picture extreme wealth. We think about the visible stuff, the mansions, the yachts, the private jets, and sure, all of that exists. But the truly wealthy, the ones so far up the chain that the numbers stop feeling real, they don't just have money, they have architecture, layers of it. Think of it this way. A regular wealthy person might have a brokerage account, some real estate, maybe a business or two. That's one layer, maybe two. Someone like Veldin doesn't have layers. He has a structure that goes so deep that from the outside it looks like nothing at all. Shell companies, trusts, holding entities, offshore accounts in jurisdictions specifically chosen because they don't require disclosure. Nominee directors, which are real people whose names appear on company documents but who have nothing to do with the actual decisions. Their name is just a placeholder, a legal fiction, and it's completely legal in most places, which is kind of the point. Each layer exists to hide what's underneath it, and at the very bottom of all those layers, buried under years of deliberate complexity, is the truth about where the money really comes from and where it really goes. That truth is what someone like Veldin spends an enormous amount of money protecting. Because if ordinary people actually understood it, really understood it, everything would look different. After that night, I became obsessed. I won't pretend otherwise. That room wouldn't leave my head. The monitors, the folders with country names, the person standing silently against the wall like they were part of the furniture. I kept turning it over and over, and eventually I stopped being able to ignore it. So I started digging, on my own time, no budget, no connections, just public records, property filings, business registrations, and old news articles from small regional papers that nobody had ever bothered to digitize properly. The kind of information that technically exists, but that no one has ever thought to connect. Slowly, like a photograph developing in a darkroom, the picture started to form. Veldin was connected to at least 30 separate companies across 11 different countries, but none of them were in his name. They were registered under lawyers, assistants, and those nominee directors I mentioned. And here's where it got strange. In some cases, the same person was listed as a director of companies in 3 different countries simultaneously. That's not possible if you're a real human being doing a real job. That's only possible if your name is just being borrowed. That's the trick. Technically legal, practically invisible. One of the oldest moves in the book. But when I tried to trace where the actual money was coming from, that's when I hit a wall. Every trail led back to the same place, a parent company registered on a small Caribbean island, incorporated in 1998, and in over 20 years of existence, it had never filed a single public financial statement, not once. That's unusual, but not automatically illegal. Certain jurisdictions just don't require it, which is again exactly why they're used. But then I found something I probably wasn't supposed to find.
A leaked database. You've probably heard of these. Over the years, there have been a few major leaks of offshore financial records. The Panama Papers, the Pandora Papers, millions of documents showing how wealth hides itself. Those stories get 2 weeks of news coverage. and then disappear. But buried inside one of those databases, in a file that had only been partially indexed, was a reference to Veldon's Caribbean company, and attached to it was a list of transactions. Not the full picture, but enough to make my stomach drop. The transactions showed money flowing from that parent company into a web of smaller entities. Some were real businesses on paper: hotels, farming operations, a logistics company. Things that look legitimate, things that have a reason to exist. But mixed in with those were transfers to entities that had no employees, no property, no activity of any kind. They existed purely to receive money and pass it somewhere else. That's called layering. You move funds through enough hands, enough companies, enough countries, and by the time it resurfaces, it looks clean. It looks like it came from a legitimate business. And proving it didn't, that takes years of forensic accounting and international law enforcement cooperation that almost never actually happens. The system is built to be unfollowable. That's the design. But I had something the forensic accountants didn't. I had seen that room. I had seen those folders. And I had this feeling, one I can't shake and still can't fully explain, that what I was looking at wasn't just clever tax strategy. This was something with weight to it, something with consequences. One of those country folders. I glimpsed a name on it, a small developing nation in West Africa. I won't say which one specifically, but it's a country most people would recognize, a country that's been in the news for poverty, political instability, and resource conflicts for decades. When I started looking at Veldon's network in connection with that country, I found something that genuinely took the air out of me. One of his shell companies was a registered partner in a joint venture with that country's state mining authority. In plain language, one of Veldon's invisible companies had a government-backed deal to extract minerals from that country's land. The deal was worth, based on the one document I managed to find, around $400 million over 10 years. $400 million flowing through a company with no employees, no office address, and that had been incorporated just 6 months before the deal was signed. Where did that money go? Who actually benefited? Did it reach the people of that country? Did it fund schools, hospitals, roads? Or did it just disappear into the layers? I couldn't prove it either way, but the pattern was clear enough that I felt sick just looking at it. That's when things stopped being abstract. About 8 months into my research, I started noticing things. Small things at first, the kind you dismiss immediately because you tell yourself you're being paranoid. A dark blue sedan, tinted windows, parked outside my building 2 mornings in a row. Same spot, same car. I told myself it was nothing. Then my delivery routes started changing. New addresses, different parts of the city, places I'd never been assigned before. And my supervisor, who'd been relaxed and easy to talk to for 2 years, suddenly became a different person. Short answers, wouldn't hold eye contact. One day, I asked him a simple question about one of our clients, and he cut me off almost before I finished the sentence. Don't worry about the clients, just do the deliveries. He'd never said that, ever. And then, one evening, I came home, and my front door was unlocked. I always lock it. I'm someone who checks it twice. But it was unlocked, and nothing inside was missing. Nothing was moved. Nothing was disturbed. Except on my kitchen counter, there was a single sheet of paper that hadn't been there when I left, completely blank. No writing, no marks, nothing. I know how that sounds. I know, sitting here, describing it, it sounds like absolutely nothing. Just a piece of paper.
But in context, after 8 months of what I'd been finding, after what I'd seen in that room, that blank sheet of paper was the most frightening thing I'd ever come to. 'Cause it wasn't saying anything. That was the point. A blank page can't be used as evidence. You can't show it to the police and say you were threatened. You can't point to it and say, here's what they did. It gives you nothing.
And yet it said everything. We were here. We can get in. We don't need to say another word. That's the message. And it landed perfectly. I want to be straight with you about what I did after that. I didn't go to the police. I didn't call a journalist. I didn't do anything heroic. I did what I think almost any ordinary person would do when they realized they've wandered into something they were never supposed to see. I stopped. I deleted everything. Deleted the files, wiped the search history, closed every tab I'd had open for months. I put my head down and I tried very hard to go back to being invisible. And it worked, mostly. The car stopped appearing. My door stayed locked. But you can't delete what's already inside your head. The network, the layers, the 400 million, the room, the monitors, the folders with those country names, the person standing against the wall in silence. I carried all of that around with me for 2 years without telling a single person until 2 months ago, when I read something changed that. It was a small article, international section of a financial news site, the kind of thing most people scroll right past. It was about a coalition of European regulators opening an investigation into a network of offshore companies connected to illegal resource extraction in Africa. And right there, in the middle of a long list of company names under investigation, was one I recognized, one I had found in my research. My hands were shaking before I'd even finished the sentence, because that meant it was real. The picture I'd put together with nothing. No resources, no training, no connections. It was real. Real enough that multiple governments were quietly looking into it. Real enough to land on an official investigation list. And then came a question I couldn't shake. If I found this using internet searches and leaked documents and some accidental seconds in a doorway, what do the actual investigators know? What does the full picture look like? And why? Why is nothing happening faster? Here's the part that's hard to sit with. When you have $40 to $60 billion, accountability isn't something that comes for you the way it would come for anyone else. You have legal teams embedded in every jurisdiction that matters, not just good lawyers, the absolute best, firms that have spent decades learning exactly how close to the line you can get without crossing it. Firms that can delay, redirect, or simply outlast almost any investigation. Beyond the lawyers, there's political influence. Not always obvious, not always direct, but campaign funding, think tank grants, media ownership, consulting contracts. There are dozens of completely legal mechanisms through which that level of wealth shapes the environment around itself, makes sure the people making decisions are at least cautious, at least reluctant to push too hard. And then there's something even quieter than all of that: reputation management. There are actual companies, real ones you could look up if you knew where to look, that specialize in what they call narrative control and reputation protection. Their job is to monitor everything being said about their client, online, in the press, in legal proceedings, and to shape what that conversation looks like before it gets out of hand. They don't just respond to problems, they get ahead of them. They identify potential sources of exposure early. They have relationships with journalists and editors, in some cases with platforms themselves. For someone like Veldon, who has spent his entire career engineering his own invisibility, this is probably one of the most essential things he pays for. The goal isn't to fight bad stories. The goal is to make sure there are no stories at all. That if someone, say a document courier, who accidentally pushed open the wrong door, starts poking around, they eventually hit a silence so total that they start to question what they even saw.
That blank piece of paper, that was part of this. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't evidence of anything. It was a message designed to make me feel small, to make me feel like stopping was the only rational choice. And it worked. For 2 years, it worked. But I kept coming back to those folders.
Because here's the thing. This isn't just a story about a rich man doing clever things with money. Hidden money doesn't just float in a vacuum. It represents something that moved from somewhere. A deal was made, a resource was taken, a favor was arranged, and on the other side of every one of those transactions is a real place with real people who felt the consequences. That West African country, whatever happened with that $400 million mining deal, the money went somewhere, either into the pockets of government officials who signed it, into Veldon's network, or both. Probably both. And either way, it didn't go where it was supposed to go. That country has one of the highest child mortality rates in the world, infrastructure that's been crumbling for decades, communities without access to clean water or basic medical care, not because the resources don't exist under their feet, but because of a transaction that happened in a country they've never heard of through a company that doesn't officially exist, arranged by a man whose name they'll never know. The money didn't disappear, it just moved into a layer they can't see. That's the hidden side of wealth. That's the part he needs you to never discover. What I went through isn't unique. I found that out later. There's actually a term used in financial crime research for what happened to me. It's called a soft warning. Instead of an explicit threat, which creates evidence, which draws attention, powerful actors use indirect pressure, a changed routine, a distant supervisor, blank piece of paper, signals that communicate clearly to the person receiving them without giving that person anything concrete to act on. And in almost every documented case, the person receiving those signals does exactly what I did. They stop. Not because they're cowards, because we're just not wired to fight something we can't see or name. When the danger is formless, when you can feel it but can't point to it, the fear becomes something that lives inside you. It makes everything feel suspicious. It makes you distrust your own instincts, and eventually, it makes stopping feel like the only sensible thing to do. The people who manage security for someone like Veldon understand this precisely. They've built entire systems around it. The power of that level of wealth isn't just financial, it's psychological. It's the ability to make resistance feel pointless before you've even decided to resist. There's one more thing I found during my research that I've never been able to fully put down. It was buried in an old civil lawsuit. A former employee of one of Veldon's holding companies had filed for wrongful termination about 15 years ago. Standard stuff on the surface. But inside the lawsuit documents, there was a statement from that former employee describing in carefully vague language, the kind you use when a lawyer has reviewed every sentence, a system used by the company to collect and store information on employees, vendors, journalists, and investigators. Not just professional information, personal information, financial situations, health records, all of it quietly gathered and filed away. The lawsuit settled within 3 months. Confidentiality agreement. That employee never said another word publicly, but the statement was already in the public record, filed before anyone thought to stop it. And what it described wasn't a company that reacted to threats. It was a company that anticipated them, that built files on people who might one day become inconvenient, people who'd never done anything, people who'd just gotten a little too close. At some point during all of this, something shifted in how I was thinking about it. I'd been treating it like a mystery, like there was a final document, a final connection that would make everything click into place, and then something would happen. Something would change. Accountability would arrive.
But that's not how this works. The reason someone like Veldon can operate this way isn't ignorance. It isn't that investigators don't know, or journalists haven't figured it out, or governments are asleep. It's that knowing isn't enough. The architecture of what he's built is specifically designed to make knowledge insufficient. You can have the pattern, the suspicions, the evidence that doesn't quite connect, and you still hit a wall of legal complexity and jurisdictional confusion and procedural delay that can stretch for years.
sometimes decades. That's the hardest thing I've had to accept through all of this. The system isn't broken. It's functioning exactly as it was designed to function. And people like Veldon didn't just learn to exploit it. In many ways, they helped build it. Let me tell you about my last delivery. It was about a month after the blank piece of paper. I'd stopped researching, deleted everything, tried to be normal again. But I still needed the job, so I kept showing up, kept delivering, told myself it had nothing to do with any of it. That last day, I was sent to a private residence out past the city limits. Long driveway, iron gates, the kind of security cameras that look expensive even from the road. I buzzed the intercom. A voice told me to leave the package at the gate, so I did. And as I turned to walk back to my car, a black car came slowly down the driveway. It stopped about 20 feet from me, on the other side of the gate, engine running, window up, just sitting there, watching me. For about 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then it reversed, went back to the house, and I drove away. The next morning, I handed in my resignation. My supervisor nodded, said, "Okay." That was the end of it. I've thought a lot about what any of this is actually worth, what the right response to all of it is. And I don't think it's panic. I don't think it's rage. I don't think it's the kind of distrust that makes you see conspiracies in everything and trust nothing. I think it's awareness, real awareness, a clear-eyed look at how this world actually functions versus how we're told it functions. The financial system that allows someone like Veldon to operate this way isn't some criminal underworld hiding in the shadows. It runs through legitimate banks, legitimate law firms, legitimate accounting firms in legitimate jurisdictions. The shell companies have real legal standing. The offshore accounts are held at real banks. The nominee directors have real credentials. Everything is technically legal. The illegality, when it exists, lives in the margins, in specific transactions, in specific misrepresentations, in the gap between what was said and what was actually done. And proving that gap in a framework designed by people who knew exactly how close to the line they could stay is extraordinarily, deliberately hard. This isn't failure. This is the system working as intended. And the only way anything changes is if enough people understand that. Not just feel something is wrong, but actually understand the mechanics of how it operates. The European regulatory investigation I mentioned earlier. Over the 18 months after that first article, there were a few small updates, additional company names added to the list, a couple of former associates apparently cooperating with investigators, the slow, grinding kind of progress these things make when they're moving at all. And then, about 4 months ago, the updates just stopped. The coverage dried up, the story slipped into that gap between news cycles where so many of these things quietly disappear. Whether the investigation is still moving behind the scenes, whether something significant is being built in private, I genuinely don't know. But I know the machine didn't stop. The layers kept accumulating, the influence kept running. The shadow system doesn't wait around to see if accountability is coming. And that's the uncomfortable truth I have to leave you with. Not a resolution, not a satisfying ending, just the reality of how these things actually work. After I resigned, I spent about 6 months in a low-grade fear that I can't fully describe. Nothing was happening, but the absence of anything happening becomes its own kind of weight when you're waiting. Every unfamiliar car, every unexpected knock, every time I almost mentioned it to someone and then stopped myself. I'm not a paranoid person. I'm not someone who dramatizes things. I'm telling you that because I need you to understand the impact was real and it was significant. And I hadn't even done anything that brave. I looked at some public records. I accidentally stood in a doorway for some seconds. That's the full extent of it. And the weight of what I'd stumbled into sat on me like something physical, for 2 years. I think about the real journalists sometimes, the ones who actually chase these stories, who find the real sources and the real documents, and then try to put it in front of the public in the face of legal threats and reputational attacks and all the other tools that concentrated power uses to stay quiet. Those people are doing something genuinely important, and a lot of them pay a real price for it. I keep coming back to those monitors. 15 screens, different feeds, different windows into different parts of the world. The shipping map, the spreadsheets, the camera feeds. I've spent a lot of time trying to reconstruct what exactly was on those feeds. I was too overwhelmed in the moment to process it properly, but one of them stays with me more than the others. It was a private residence, suburban, nice neighborhood, well-kept lawn, a family car in the driveway, the most ordinary-looking house you can picture. And someone in that room, in that building I wasn't supposed to be in, was watching it in real time. I don't know whose house it was. I don't know why it was on that screen. Competitor, a partner, an employee, someone who'd asked the wrong question, but someone was watching it. And the person who lived there had absolutely no idea. Here's what I believe after all of it. The most dangerous knowledge isn't military secrets or political scandals. It's a clear, honest understanding of how money moves at the highest levels, how wealth accumulates, how it protects itself, how the financial infrastructure of the modern world is built in a way that lets a small number of people operate almost entirely outside the rules everyone else lives by. That knowledge is dangerous, not because it's a weapon, but because it removes the comfortable story we tell ourselves about how things work. The story that says the system is fair, or at least fair enough. That says success at extreme levels is mostly about merit. That says the rules mean the same thing regardless of how many zeros are in your account. Those stories are comfortable. They let most people engage with the world in good faith. And maybe that's exactly why so much effort goes into maintaining them. Because a population that actually understands the game is a population that might want to change it. Changing it would cost people like Veldon everything. I wonder sometimes if the man who pointed me to the elevator ever thinks about the courier who pushed open the wrong door. Probably not. I was a minor incident, a blip, something to note, manage, and forget. But I remember everything, and now, so do you. That's all I can offer. Not a solution, not justice.
Just the story of a door left slightly open, and what was visible through the crack, and what it cost me to keep looking. The question I keep asking myself is simple. If you'd been standing in that doorway, if you'd seen what I saw in those 12 or 15 seconds, would you have walked away? Or would you have done exactly what I did? I think most people would have done what I did. And I think that's exactly what they're counting on.